Hey everyone, welcome back to MEE Live. Israel struck Lebanon around 100 times in just 10 minutes in what is seen as an unprecedented wave of attacks. Lebanon has now declared a national day of mourning. The strikes targeted multiple areas, including the capital Beirut, as well as eastern Lebanon and the south. Now, more than 200 people have been killed and over 1,000 injured. Israel launched these attacks shortly after a US-Iranian ceasefire was announced. While Israel said Lebanon was not part of the truce, mediator Pakistan stated that it did, in fact, include the country. So, what is Israel's endgame in Lebanon? We are now joined by Dr. Chloe Kattar, a historian of modern Lebanon and a research fellow at the University of Cambridge. Dr. Chloe, thanks for coming on the show during this difficult time.
Thank you for having me. It's important that you include Lebanese voices at that time.
Absolutely, and we're going to get right to it, Dr. Chloe. Can you tell us what stories you've been hearing from people on the ground? Are people in shock? Are they angry? What is the mood in Lebanon right now?
I mean, the mood is frankly total and mass panic. So what happened yesterday, as you described it in your introduction, and what Israel named Operation Eternal Darkness, I think it's a very fitting name for what Israel is really aiming to do in Lebanon, which is just continuous destruction of the country. It doesn't see any end to it. And in contrast to what it usually does in some instance, which is targeted strikes on specific areas or specific buildings and people, Israel launched a full attack on the whole country. And in Beirut especially, it attacked very urban, very populated urban areas, killing lots of people who were just walking in the streets, minding their business at home, just doing groceries. And then it claimed that these were Hezbollah targets, which were not. So what we're seeing here effectively is just Israel trying to destroy whatever is remaining at the moment of a very fragile social fabric in Lebanon. As we know, Lebanon has been struggling for years now for many different reasons. And people feel very vulnerable and very defenseless at the moment. It's like they want us to be like on the verge of collapse. And I think the aim is to cause civil strife internally, to pit Lebanese against each other. People are very afraid because Israel has published yesterday a map of Lebanon that includes its entirety as a possible target. There are no more safe space, and this is frankly is something that can only be categorized as a terrorist attack. Like there are no other words for that, because Israel is simply using intimidation and violence against civilian for some political and military aim that it has.
Sure.
And for many people in Lebanon, this was very, very reminiscent of the Beirut blast, which happened in 2020. We saw the same nationwide catastrophe across the capital and the country, the same collapsed building, the same imagery, like, missing people, shattered glass, rubble, oversaturated hospital. It is nothing less than collective trauma and punishment.
And there's so much in what you are just saying, Dr. Chloe, that we're going to try to unpack in the time that we have. But I'm interested in what you said as Israel's aim right now is to create civil strife in Lebanon. And I want to ask you about this because in terms of the political analysis and what's going on right now, there's analysis that points to the fact that Israel is basically trying to derail the ceasefire agreement between the U.S. And Iran. But if we put that to the side, as I'm sure you know, Dr. Chloe, The term Greater Israel has been in the media for some time now. There's been a lot more scrutiny towards Israel's goals in the region in terms of expanding its territory. So when you say civil strife or an aim to have civil strife in Lebanon, could we see it through that same prism, through that same perspective?
So what I mean by civil strife is perhaps not a full-on civil war, like the one that happened in the 70s, in which Israel took part and sided with one specific party. It means pitting Lebanese against each other, and especially against Hezbollah, which for many is considered as the party that has started the war against Israel and then brought Israel over Lebanon. So I think what Israel is wanting to achieve is creating that intense distrust internally, so that it can further destabilize Lebanon and continue its aim, whatever it's doing in the south at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you about your loved ones. What stories have you been hearing on the ground? What have they been able to tell you?
My loved ones are all very afraid.
Sure.
They mostly live in urban centers like Beirut, and they know at the moment that Israel is just hitting indiscriminately. So anyone could be next. You can be living in your apartment in Lebanon, and underneath the pretense that a Hezbollah member is in your building can be struck down and you can die. So yesterday, my grandmother, I'm just giving you a personal anecdote.
No, please
my
do.
grandmother
Please do.
died of old age. And my parents were at her funeral in Beirut, and they could barely wrap up the funeral because the bombs were falling everywhere. And we are originally from South Lebanon, so my grandma is supposed to be buried next to my grandfather in Jazin, which is a village on the mountains in the south of Lebanon. And we could barely believe that her coffin made it there, because a few days ago, Israel hit this road that leads you to Jazin to kill several journalists that were taking that road. So no one is safe. The people who are dead, the people who are alive, there is no space to have any grief. You don't have time to process what's happening, and then the next atrocity has hit you. This is why I'm saying Israel says that it wants to disarm Hezbollah, but I think it's using this as a trap for the Lebanese government, because if Israel itself, which is one of the mightiest armies in the world, has not been able to disarm Hamas, how is the Lebanese government, who has, as we know, a very weak military infrastructure, is going to be able to disarm Hezbollah, that is way stronger than Hamas? So this is a trap for the Lebanese government. It's just collective punishment on Lebanese society, and Israel is destroying Lebanon just simply because it can, because no one can stop it, and Israel thrives off instability in Lebanon for its aim, to depopulate the south, create whatever no man's zone it wants there, we are paying the price.
When you say it's a trap for the Lebanese government, how do you see Hezbollah's position right now? Is the war deepening the internal divisions inside Lebanese society? And it's a society that's already deeply divided.
Exactly. So I think Hezbollah is being under a lot of pressure at the moment. It is under a lot of pressure, both from the Lebanese government, because they have been in discussion for disarmament, and from the general population that is not wanting to be in a war that seems to many unwinnable. And so we don't know how we might get out of this, because even if Hezbollah is able to fight off Israel in the south on a ground invasion level, which we know Hezbollah is capable of, nobody can defend Lebanon and its civilian population from aerial attacks on behalf of Israel. Mm-hmm. So this is a very vulnerable position to be in, and a lot of people hold Hezbollah responsible for that, even though it's Israel dropping the bombs, obviously. So it's a very delicate situation that is building, as you said, upon sectarian grievances and sensibilities that have existed for decades. So it's really bad for everyone in Lebanon, and I think Hezbollah included. Yeah.
What you're saying about the inability to defend the country, that actually takes me to an important point, because if people ask you, Dr. Chloe, about the Lebanese army, let's say, what role does the Lebanese army play
Yeah.
today, and how do we understand it within the dynamics of the Lebanese state?
Well, unfortunately, the Lebanese army cannot protect the country. This has been made very painfully clear through this last predicament we were in. The Lebanese army is underfunded. It has no weapons up to the standards to such fights, to wage even a defensive war against Israel. And obviously, this has been the case for years. It's not just now. And there are many reasons for that. There are obviously the internal politics within the state. And, the main political players in Lebanon that have not, imposed important policies internally to make sure that we have enough money and a vision actually for the army, for our defensive and military strategy. But because there's also a regional agreement that the Lebanese army cannot be strengthened because it will pose a threat to Israel. So there's also our inability so far to find or buy weapons for the Lebanese army because this would be a threat to Israel. So, and this is why this Hezbollah fighting at the moment in the south.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to what you were saying about your grandmother's funeral, and firstly, my condolences to you and your family.
Thank you.
But on the just to give again viewers a mood or an understanding of the mood and the situation, the areas that were struck in Lebanon the other day were traditionally considered outside of conflict zones. That's how they've been reported. Now, is there
Yes.
such a thing anymore? And what I mean by that is there anywhere in Lebanon that can be called safe?
No, no, not anymore. Not anymore. Definitely not. And again, this is a strategy on behalf of Israel. No one was safe from the beginning. It's just that because the South has been the first and main target of Israel. For very long months, there was a sort of dissociation, happening inside the country. Like Israel was bombing the South, and there was nothing that the Lebanese government or the army could do about it. So the rest of the country was considered safe. Refugees fleeing from the South would go to Beirut, but now there is no illusion around that. This is all shattered, and Israel has clearly said and published a whole map of Lebanon, and this map in its entirety is in red. And usually Israel puts those parts of Lebanese geography in red to say that this is, their aim targets. So we are all now, the whole of Lebanon is technically an unsafe area. And this is simply a way for Israel to just allows itself to bomb anything and just destroys whatever is remaining of Lebanon.
And
Yeah.
adding to that as well, Dr. Chloe, 1.3 million people have been reportedly displaced since March, and that's a fifth of Lebanon. So how can the Lebanese government deal with this displacement issue?
It can deal with it in very limited terms, to put it very bluntly, because the Lebanese government lacks resources, and also because the inner infrastructure in Lebanon is unable to cope with more refugee and displacement crisis. And this is in a context of Lebanon being already a refuge for Palestinian and Syrian refugees. It's a very small country that has very weakened public services and resources and infrastructure. It's geographically small. So that's a lot of people being concentrated in one area of the country. So even if the Lebanese government was, very powerful, very able, I think the what we are faced with is technically a social catastrophe. That there's not much that we can do, and Lebanese society is at the moment, because of its historical hospitality and kindness, being able um, to accommodate those waves of refugees and displaced people, but it doesn't bode well
Mhm.
for the coming few months on how to manage that. Yeah.
Now, Lebanon has endured the civil war of 75, the Israeli invasion of 82, the 2006 war, and now this. And some survivors, I've heard some survivors are saying that they've never actually seen Beirut destroyed to this extent. Now, can you speak to what that means, as well as historically, too?
Um, well, it is true. What is happening today is being compared not only to the Beirut blast, which was, as we know, the biggest non-nuclear explosion in recent history, in which destroyed many neighborhoods in the capital, but it's also being compared to the Israeli invasion of 1982,
Mm.
which was an episode where the Israeli army not only invaded the south, but went beyond the previous occupation that it had completed in 1978, and then they went all the way to Beirut. And this was obviously a watershed moment in Lebanese history, and I would say Middle Eastern history, because this was the first time where an Arab capital, like a whole city, was actually occupied and invaded by the Israeli army. And so the
Mm.
destruction was massive. And this is why today, these selective, moment from our collective memories and history are coming back, because even though the Israeli army is not within Beirut, through their control of our airspace, they are able to destroy huge chunks of the capital, especially in the suburbs.
And adding on to that, Dr. Chloe, there are fears mounting that Israel basically intends to turn Lebanon, especially the south, into another Gaza. And not to get hung up on comparisons, but is that a fear that you have?
I don't think it's a fear anymore. I think
Hmm.
this is declared policy. A lot of Israeli officials have said that um, Lebanon will be met with the same fate as Gaza. Let's also rewind here to say that actually this policy has started in Lebanon. It's called the Dahya Doctrine, which means
Yes.
carpet bombing of civilian and social infrastructure to bring, quote unquote, the military group on its knees. But it started in 2006 in Beirut, in Dahya, the suburbs of Beirut. So they're applying this to the south as we speak. We know that Israel is literally destroying um, entire villages, wherever they are. If they're not bombing those villages, they're putting explosive within the houses and just completely destroying those villages in South Lebanon at the border. They have destroyed most of the bridges linking the south of Lebanon to the rest of the country. So their policy is an active policy of isolation of South Lebanon, so that um, it can better control this part of the country. And this comes with active displacement, which can be called ethnic cleansing, literally. And it says that this is for its security, but the point really is to transform that land into some sort of no-go zone. Anyone who tries to go to the south now just gets killed, civilian or not. And um, the aim really is to stay in the land as much as it can. And my hope is that this will not be permanent, because Israel tried that back during the civil war, and it did retreat in 2000. So I believe that it will leave the country again. The question is what the price will be for that. and who can actually stop Israel and who can make it leave Lebanon? These are the important questions.
Before I let you go, Dr. Chloe, I want to close with this. On your Instagram, on your social media, you recently wrote, quote, "This is a wake-up call to all of us. Lebanon as we know it is dying." Now, can I ask you to unpack this for me in terms of what you meant when you wrote that?
So this was the remark I was doing when I saw the footage from yesterday, and it was a clear reminder to me that this had happened, that something similar had happened to us again in August 2020. And so, although I realize that Israel is one of the main causes of conflict and instability and terrorism in the Middle East, if not the biggest cause, because as we know, Hezbollah and Hamas were created as a response to Hezbollah. I also think that the Lebanese people have responsibility as well towards their inner politics. I think there needs to be way more awareness and way more commitment to build a state that can protect us, that can have a vision for us, where we are not anymore made so vulnerable to whatever happens within the region. And I'm aware that there are many, many elements that comes into it, but it is extremely distressful to see today the Lebanese government being so paralyzed and unable to do much. And there are many reasons for that, but it is definitely something that we need to think of and look back and understand how we've arrived to this degree of defenselessness and vulnerability. So there is a part that is also on us.
And on that note, Dr. Chloe Kattar, my thoughts are with you and with your loved ones, and thank you so much for coming on MEE Live. And to our viewers,
Thank you very
and to our viewers, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.